Save Local Journalism, episode number 17. You're watching the Black Press Live. Today we have two publishers today instead of the usual four. Gina Wilson Stewart of the Telegraph newspaper, uh, and Al McFarlane of the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. Al should be joining us shortly, but we're going to start with Gina. Gina, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. Just extremely busy, but I'm fine.
Well, we're so glad to hear that, Gina. A lot's going on. Obviously, we're still in a pandemic. There is the George Floyd aftermath with the protests and demonstrations that are going on. What's the news of the day for you guys right now?
I think we're focusing on COVID-19 testing and the census. I know we have a lot of other things going on, but we cover a lot of the hard to count communities, minority communities, and we're finding out that we haven't had a lot of testing in our area and our census numbers are low. So we're just doing mostly focusing on those type of issues. So right now we partnered with a couple of different organizations and we are doing COVID-19 testing as we speak from 1 to 5 today at one of the local churches. So we think that's very important.
Yeah, and see again, you underscored one of the things we always hear from our different publishers is the importance of the Black press in their communities, and what you're doing is phenomenal, especially given the fact that, like you said, COVID-19, the testing has not necessarily been widely available, and here you guys are in the midst of helping others get tests. What's the response been like?
So it took us from April till last week to actually get the testing. We tried a lot of different avenues, and for some reason, they were not receptive to us having testing in our areas.
Wow.
But fortunately, one of the community medical centers agreed to do testing in our communities, even though they're about less than a mile away from us. We wanted it in our community because we figured we would get more people there. We signed up for 20 people last Wednesday and we ended up with 48
Oh, wow.
getting tested. So they were nonstop busy. We were strategically placed on a right off a main street and we advertised it. We got the word out and people just kept coming. Very, very excited. And today we have another full sheet of appointments scheduled, but so many other people are telling us they're coming, even though we'll
Yeah.
squeeze them in. But it's very, very important that people get tested because they say we're the demographic that's going to get it. So why
Yeah.
was it hard for us to get tested in our communities? So
Yeah.
we
And
just
we
kept
know.
pushing.
Yeah, and we know a disproportionate number of African Americans have died from COVID-19. When you look at the overall numbers and those that they have given us the ethnic or ethnicity behind it. Um, Gina Wilson Stewart, tell us too, you're speaking about something again so vital. We can't even say important, we have to say vital, right? So the Black press is known for being hands-on, as we said, in the community. So it's really carrying on a tradition, isn't it? Can you tell us a little bit more about your newspaper and what that means to be so involved in the community?
So this year is our 75th anniversary. So we've been around for a very long time. We started in the city of Ecorse and we covered Ecorse, River Rouge, and Southwest Detroit. Those were the only three cities we covered for the first 50 years or so, 58 years. And then after that, once I became a publisher, we expanded and now we cover all of Wayne County, which is basically where Detroit is. But we've always been doing things in the community. So I grew up community activist in my neighborhood with my parents. And when I took over the paper, we just continued that effort from doing voter registration to getting people, like we're doing testing right now, and then just getting people involved with city government issues. And we try to keep them informed about what's going on with the city governments as well as community groups. But one thing that we're really excited about is we do a lot of senior stars, the people who are over 80 years old. We feature them in the paper and they get a chance to tell us about life when they was growing up and who their friends were. And those are some of our biggest issues that we have, because they like to see themselves and their family see them in the paper. And that helps us with our community outreach. So that's actually working pretty good.
Well, that's a tremendous. And as far as the paper is concerned, have you guys been working from the office or at home?
So I actually been working the majority of the time at home. My office is only, I don't know, 5 minutes away from home, but I work from home most of the time just because I'm just a little nervous about the COVID, so I don't go out that much.
Yeah, yeah. And the community response, again, you're talking about the testing and what you guys have accomplished, but outside of COVID, I'm sure that you guys have covered and have been immersed in other things that you've done in the community. I know there are papers that do forums or town halls and the like. What else does your paper get involved in, Gina, that you might be proud of?
Well, we have awesome photographers, and what they want to do is attend the protests and then send us back the photos, which I don't have any problem with. I'm really excited. One of our main photographers is Dale Rich. He's been a photojournalist forever, and he just loves it. Even though he's probably about almost 75 years old, he loves to go out there and just shoot from the hip, and he sends back some great photos. He gets right up in the midst of it, and so we get to see what's
Wow.
going on. But because we cover so much area, we cover like 18 different cities.
Oh,
So
wow.
whether we're in downtown Detroit covering something, or if we're in a Westland, which is a suburb of Detroit, or if we're out here in Ecorse, River Rouge area, we still cover what's going on. Whether we're doing, like this week was food drives, because we want to make sure people know where they can get some food to eat. So we always do features on that, so they'll know where they can go to get food. And we had another one out here in Ecorse with the county actually supported it, but we helped promote it for them so we know that people can actually get food this week. Even though we have it on our website as well, that where they can go to get food on a weekly basis.
Right. And Gina, many of our publishers are located in the communities that they serve. Do you think that location is important to the quality of journalism and the content that you provide?
I wouldn't say that. We're just hyper local. So because we cover those 18 cities, we actually have a good relationship with the people in the communities. So when something is going on, they'll definitely let us know, and then it makes it easier for us to cover. So it doesn't matter where we're 30 miles out or is around the corner at the next event. We still can get there and cover it.
Yeah, and again, for the Telegraph and for people who are not familiar with it, can you kind of give us a little bit of the history of your newspaper and how long you've been around, et cetera?
Yes, so we started in 1944, just covering those three cities, Ecorse, Rouge, and Southwest Detroit. And the publisher was J.C. Wall, and he owned the paper for 50 years. And then Mr. Wade took it over, and Mr. Wall told Mr. Wade, don't let his little paper die. And so he covered it for 8 years. And then I met him doing a career fair,
Oh,
and we had a good partnership. And then for 6 years, I worked with him. And then he wanted to go home and go fishing. And then I bought the business from him in '06.
oh,
And
okay.
since that time, we expanded. We doubled in size and increased our circulation, and we have been growing and growing and growing. And we have the support of the city governments, which is really, really exciting. It's more trying, but we do get a lot of support from our city governments. And I think 75 years, that tells a story that we're here for the long haul, right? So
I think so.
next month, August 1st, is our 76th year.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
So you got reason to celebrate. What's that been like though? You know, you look back, you think about all of the papers that have not survived, and I'm talking mainstream. We
Right.
think about all of the advertising that is left. Talk a little bit about the struggle.
Yeah, it has the biggest struggle was we were planning this big 75th gala to celebrate at the Charles Wright Museum, but of course we had to push that off. You know, you only get 75 one time, so and we was waiting to the back end of 75 instead of doing it last year, and now we probably should have had it at the beginning of 75, which would have been last year. We would have been pre-COVID, so we won't have that opportunity.
Yeah, we are joined by Al McFarlane out in Minneapolis of Insight News. Earlier I said spokesman recorder, and I was way off.
Right.
Hey Al, how are you?
I'm well. How you doing?
Good. Al's a veteran of our program now. We might as well just assign him co-hosting duties here. Um, but Al, what's the latest from Minneapolis? We're seeing the effects of obviously the situation with George Floyd. You and I have talked about that at length. We're seeing it all over the world now. What's the scene like now?
Well, the conversation is around the feeling that seminal change is underway. Something is happening different in the world today, and Minneapolis and St. Paul people, residents here, political people, businesses, all seem to concur that this is ground zero. What happened with George Floyd, and that as a compounding element on top of the global pandemic, coronavirus pandemic, brings special awareness, special attention. So people are walking around with a sense and a feeling that something different is afoot right now. That's the feeling. How does it express itself? Well, I think the business community has rallied to generate millions of dollars to support businesses and community organizations and initiatives in ways that they hadn't done before, in ways where in past they might have been resistant, skeptical, or with their classic sense of paternalistic benevolence, awarding grants to organizations. But there's a different sense of urgency right now. And some of that attitude that I think is counterproductive and dismissive has been challenged, checked, and put away. That's one difference. People are generating funds to support community activism, the voice of young people, Black Lives Matter in particular. Two or three of the youth-led organizations that were kind of unofficial street originating activist organizations, all of a sudden in 10 days found their bank accounts loaded with millions of dollars. One organization reported $27 million of donations from around the world to support
Oh,
their work
wow.
on the front line. And so there's a lot of money moving, and some of the people that are in the pipeline are feeling besieged, overwhelmed, trying to connect with legacy institutions and organizations that have the capacity, the network to help them be appropriate stewards of the money that is being pushed this way out of concern for the history of things that have happened in Minnesota. And then the last thing is, our city council in Minneapolis had a meeting yesterday where they were voting on putting a charter amendment on the election this fall. The charter amendment intended to lead the discussion about disbanding the police department. Well, that's obviously a hot topic, a highly charged topic. Part of the charge comes.
It looks like Al is having some sort of difficulties there. We'll get back to Al McFarlane.
Yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
go ahead. What could it mean to disband the police department? So I think there's a lot of explaining that needs to happen. I think they chose that language with intentionality because they wanted to foster serious, deep, broad debate on the nature of police policy and the history of policing in this country. So a lot of stuff is happening here.
Sounds like it. Gina Wilson Stewart, I'm going to go back to you with the Telegram. Is there specific news content that your readers expect to get from your publication?
I don't think it's anything in specific that they want to get. It's that we try to cover everything that's going on and because we cover such a broad area, we just have to be specific for that community. Just say if we have another protest, they want to hear about the protest that's going on. If we have a community event, they want to hear about the community events that's going on. So it really doesn't matter. They just want to find out what's going on in the Telegram.
and same question now, McFarland, Insight News. Is there specific news content that your readers expect to get from your publication?
They do. We cover politics aggressively. We cover Black business, economic development issues, and we are focusing on neighborhoods. There is a extensive network of what used to be called community development block grant neighborhood programs. These came out of the Great Society in the late 60s. And over the years, they've been evolved to what's called the Neighborhood Revitalization Program, NRP. And NRP has divided the city up into 87 unique, distinct neighborhoods. Each of the neighborhood has an association, organization, and some limited amount of funding if they organize and apply for it. So several of them are very active, and Insight has taken the position that the neighborhood level of civic engagement is our version of City Hall. So we report on what's happening in neighborhoods following the decisions, the discussions made by neighbors around their 20 or 30 square blocks. So that's good information. We also focus on business, promoting entrepreneurship, promoting people, our people who are in business and their solutions. And we bring the national news that we get with the help of NNPA, which is a great source of keeping our people connected globally.
Yeah, and Al McFarland, Gina Wilson Stewart of the Telegram. Many times on this program, our publishers have shared ideas with each other, shared thoughts, especially in this moment because so much is going on. Is there anything that you two would like to share with each other? Perhaps, offer any type of advice as we go through this changing times that we are in?
I would suggest that we capitalize on the interns that are going to the different colleges who definitely need to get some journalism experience. That's one of the tactics that we have used, whether they're college students or we actually offer interns for our high school students so that they can actually report on what's going on at their school districts and that way they're getting experience for writing. And then we also go with the colleges. We have a lot of colleges close by and we partner with them so that the students can actually get some experience, get their credit for school, and then we could decide whether we're going to give them work experience when they finish. And so they have a buy-in with us and a relationship with us, and it actually works out very well. I just try to get people to use more interns.
I think that we have to be mindful that our job is in part to never waste a good disaster or a good conflict or a good crisis, right? And now we've got major crises, and our job is to interpret how we exploit these situations, exploit in a good sense for the benefit of our people and for the benefit of moving society forward. I think we have to always be mindful of putting and presenting our community as a part of the solution side of the equation. Too often our communities and our people are perceived and projected and described and defined from outside of us as the problem. They called it the Negro problem way back in the day on Life magazine, and then they updated it and called it the Black problem. But it's basically white people saying that white is normal and that we remain an aberration at the margin. We remain dispensable. And so I think Our job is to challenge that notion. That notion is, in fact, the underpinning and what underpins white supremacist thought. Our job as Black communicators and as, I think, as human beings par excellence, is to challenge defective thinking that emerged in the form of white supremacist thought, and to, with the energy that's afoot right now, the clarity that the George Floyd incident brings to everybody on the planet. I mean, these are 8 minutes and 48 seconds that have captured the visceral, emotional mind of everybody on the planet. And these are 8 minutes and 48 seconds that provide irrefutable evidence of the worst part of the relationship between racism, racist thought, racist policy, and its impact on our people. The impact is certain death. We've always risen above it. We've always come back, but now we're clear on what the enemy is, who the enemy is. It's not white people. It's the act. It's the deed, right? That is destructive towards us. So I think we now have to be courageous and use this opportunity to demand of ourselves and of the business community, of the corporate community, of the political community, of the health community that, so listen, yesterday, the county I'm in, Hennepin County, passed a resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. That's amazing. It's
Right.
one of two Black women on the board of, I think, 7 or 9 county commissioners. But that's a bold move to take that to the public arena, to say that in Hennepin County, the data show that there is a public health crisis outside of the coronavirus. It's also racism. One of the guests I had on my radio television show last week was the president of the physicians at Hennepin County Medical Center. Surprised me because the show was talking about the health crisis. And this physician said, we've got 2 pandemics. One pandemic is new. We're 4 months into it. Coronavirus. The other pandemic is 400 years old, and it's white racism. And so to have white people articulating and leading the conversation with that, I think is a good thing. But talk is one thing. What do we do about it? And our job is to make sure that we document the steps that are taken to dismantle and to supplant and replace negative situations with solutions that come out of our community that reflect our humanity, our dignity, and a future in which we win.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Noah Washington, who's watching. Do we need to abolish the police or just to reform the police? It takes 7 to 8 years to be a lawyer, but only a few months to be a cop. Do you think the criteria to be a cop should be expanded and the process more extensive? Also, doesn't the power that cops have come from police unions? What a question. Gina, Al, you guys want to jump in on there?
I think it's a great question. I think the language, abolish the police, is incendiary. It's provocative, and I think it's too short a quote to encapsulate such a massive idea. But it does point to the idea of necessary change in the policy and philosophy of policing in our country. And so I think if we have the discussion and if we start thinking about what things can be done by other people than those who are in the uniform. Right now, police are being asked to do many more things than they are trained to do, than they are capable of doing, and they're not being able to focus on things that they need to do because obviously interventions where life and limb are at risk are something that you want trained personnel to do. But there are many things that we ask them to do that somebody else could be doing and that somebody else could be paid to be doing. And how do we create a change in the policy where more of our people are in the service sectors that relieve the police department from some of the things they do that they don't need to do? Let them catch the bank robbers, but not be the first call on a domestic issue or a family dispute if we could send a social worker out who's getting paid, who's trained to de-escalate. So that's the kind of thing that this conversation is leading to, and that's a good thing. I don't think anybody seriously means shut down a police department, because our people, uh, like everybody else, are interested in safety and ensuring that we have systems and processes and people who are accountable for safety. But the challenge is, how do we distinguish between the need to safety and the practice of oppression? And too often there's been a blurring of that line, where the establishment thought that creating safety meant oppressing Black people, and that's the problem, I think.
Yeah.
And I would agree with him on that, because I do believe that it's going to take a cultural change in the police department. I'm also the president of the Western Wayne County NAACP, and we've partnered to have conversation with the police chiefs in our area. Yes, just last week we had our first listening tour, where we had 18 cities represented with police chiefs and mayors and supervisors. And out of those 18 cities, it was one Black chief and one Black mayor. So you can imagine what the makeup of the room looked like when it called for all the chiefs to be on the stage to answer questions. But what we found out from doing is that we have now, just like with the protest, you have a diverse group of people that are speaking out. And the same thing happened with our listening tour, where we had people who grew up in majority cities was actually talking about the things that they witnessed happening to Black people from police officers in their majority cities. So even though the cities are maybe 2% or 4% African American, the majority of the stops have been with African Americans. And so we're looking at, how do you change that culture where they're just not pulling people over just because. And as we talked about it more and more, we've realized that it definitely has to be a cultural change where people will know that that's not acceptable anymore. And so when you talked about the data, that's what we're doing now, is compiling the data for who's being stopped, what's their race, their age, so we can go back with a strategy to say, these are the change, this is where you are right now, but in 6 months, where are you going to be, and where are you going to be in a year later, to say that you're actually working on these problems. We're putting it all in the front of everybody's eyes to say, we know you got a problem in your community. We understand that, but now what are you going to do to change it? And so, do we need the police officers? Sure, we need them, but we need them in a different way. You shouldn't have police officers just calling out when there is a domestic violence assault. That's not what their specialty is. And as far as how long it takes, some departments, it doesn't take that long to get certified as a police officer, but some is academy, which is 6 months to a year. Then it's training, where you have to ride along and do the actual police work, and then you're on your own. So some it takes up to 2 years to be a complete police officer. Is that enough to weed out the bad ones versus the good ones? I'm not 100% sure, because obviously some have gotten through, and that mentality of they're just going to do what they want to do is there. But we have to just keep them more in check and follow up with them and have more of a conversation, so we can find out exactly what they're doing and then how you're going to prevent it. That's kind of what we've been working on over the last, actually, we started before the George Floyd issue, but more so now that that happened about a month ago.
Yeah, we want to bring up a question from our publisher at the West Side Gazette in Florida. Bobby Henry says, what shall we do with the Negro? Has been of concern ever since our alleged emancipation. What we should ask ourselves instead, what are we willing to do to confirm our emancipation? And with that, Gina Wilson Stewart and Al McFarland, we know Independence Day, America's Independence Day, is coming up in a couple of days, the 4th of July. We also know that just a couple of weeks ago, there was a rally around Juneteenth, which is considered African Americans' Emancipation Day. So how should we look at things this coming 4th of July?
Well, I think things are never either or; they're always both and. And I think that we have to celebrate the spirit, the meaning of liberation that's reflected by Juneteenth. But we've got too much invested in what they call the United States of America, what they call the American dream, to walk away and to pretend like our blood didn't count, our aspirations didn't count, our investment didn't count. In fact, we made the ultimate investment, 200 plus years of free labor. And I think that we have to be mindful of and use this opportunity to begin again serious, earnest discussions about how reparations will look, what shape, what form. And it may not be one thing, but it might be a whole bunch of things that in total, in some, represent a strategy and a policy of both acknowledging and repairing that which was stolen from us through the policy of the government of the United States of America. We are owed, and we, as often as not, have been critical of ourselves by saying, "Oh, I don't want anything back. I didn't. They didn't do this to me, or my neighbors can't be held accountable." I think we have to begin to have a discussion where we, in fact, look at what accountability is. And I think the technology now, the ability to mine history, to mine the records, can give us a clear picture of who did what and how everybody benefited from that. And I think there has to be a reconciliation. So I say we celebrate and take ownership of the 4th of July, and that we tell that story from our point of view. We talk about it from our point of view, what it means to us, and in the light of our demand, our expectation for healing, restoration, and reparations. That's what I think.
Yeah, we, Gina Wilson Stewart, we were reminding everyone, I'll let you chime in, but to sign up and register for the virtual NMPA conference, which is next Wednesday and Thursday, July 8th and 9th. It's the address is www.virtualnnpa2020.com. It's free and everyone's welcome. A lot of great surprises we have in store next week. So please register and check us out. The Black Press has been around 193 years, even before the end of slavery, when our founders said we wish to plead our own cause. For too long, others have spoken for us. Gina Wilson Stewart, I want to go back to you with the same question with Al McFarland of the Insight News.
Well, I want to agree with Al on everything he said, and then I just want to take it one step further. And when we talk about how are we going to celebrate and what are we going to celebrate, I think we definitely need to start having more conversations with our family members and our extended families, because we all knew about Juneteenth, but I'm not sure everybody else did. So I know every year we do a feature on Juneteenth, before and then after. But what I found out even more this year, the more we talked about it, we found out that a lot of people don't know their history. We have to do a better job at explaining to our family members what they should be working on and who they really are. If you think about growing up, so I went to Tuskegee University, and so did all my sisters and brothers. We went to HBCUs. So what we learned there, we're trying to pass it on to our family members. And of course, our immediate family and some of our extended families know the importance of our value. But, once it goes a couple streets over, just to say, they might not know. They might not have a sense of understanding of their power, of their worth. And I think we need to do a little bit more conversation to tell us who we are. And then when it comes down to reparations, we'll know what we need to ask for. A lot of people, how they'll sell their vote for a pork chop and a Pepsi Cola, but they don't know how powerful their vote is. And if we can maybe share that information, how powerful we are, that'll help us when we try to decide what we really want. Because they say, what you want for reparations? Well, I want $1,000. Well, what is $1,000? That's nothing. So as we don't know what our worth is, we're not going to ask for what really do us. That's how I think about it.
So, as publishers, what strategies do you employ to ensure that you're maintaining or growing ad revenue and advertiser relationships? And we could start with Al.
Say it again.
So, Al, as a publisher, what strategies do you employ to ensure that you are maintaining or growing ad revenue and advertiser relationships?
Sure. Well, like I said earlier, we have to have the attitude that you can never let any crisis go on. You have to exploit every crisis. Don't waste a good crisis, right? And so, what we did in Minnesota is we worked with our senators and members of the House to call attention to the governor's office on the need to use ethnic media, Black, Asian, Latino, Native American media, to communicate information about COVID-19, the uh, the pandemic, to our communities and within the various and specific cultural contexts that we bring. And so, as a result, the state has awarded about at least 1.5 million so far ethnic media, uh, getting using our media talk to our people about both the problem, the solutions that are available, the resources that are available, and the state has done that with a certain dispatch, quickness, trying to make sure that money flowed out to the community and to our media. So for Insight News and the Spokesman newspaper, we collaborated on a project. We did several proposals, but the one that was funded was one where we use our social media platforms. We've got a project here. My company has a project called the McFarland Media Dashboard. And it's a unique idea where we connect with those neighborhood organizations that I told you about, invite them to bring their Facebook, their Twitter, their Instagram, and YouTube accounts into a dashboard alongside the McFarland Media social media projects. And then we take and share content across these various platforms. And it ends up being an organic process that allows us to, in the course of a month, reach 1 million people, an audience of 1 million people over the Twin Cities, over Minnesota. So it's a question of using the technology. And the state of Minnesota funded a social media strategy talking about COVID prevention and awareness strategies for solutions using our social media project. And that brought the Spokesman and Insight into a collaborative relationship to execute that strategy on social media. So that's what we're doing. Secondly, we're going to counties and cities and to corporations, asking them to step forward because not only in the COVID issue, but in the George Floyd rebellion, the uprisings, that expressed a deep and pervasive discontent and dissatisfaction with the status quo, and a dissatisfaction that we knew was there, but that they were unwilling to acknowledge, to hear, or respond to. And so when the streets caught on fire and businesses were burned, and then all of a sudden this thing became something people started paying attention to, and companies were saying, what could we do? What should we do? And so we have to be there to say, you should be telling the truth. You should be communicating to our people in our media, and that your sentiment for the fact that something is wrong means nothing if it's not measurable by activities. And the activities have to be measurable by the amount of revenue involved. Name of the game, follow the money. And talk is cheap if they're not investing, doing business, and reporting out the business they're doing in Black business, including our business, then they're not being genuine, they're not being real. We have a duty to call them out and say that. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Gina Wilson still have a telegraph, a
Yes.
telegram.
Yeah, so I'm gonna steal your idea because I think what you're doing is great. So I wanted to just focus because there's so many issues going on. I wanted to focus on the census as well as foreclosure prevention. Those are some of the problems that we've always been working on, and we do have buy-in from our state officials as well as the local advertising firms to help us get that word across. I know all the new stuff has happened, but we still need to make sure that our people are, one, able to stay in their homes, and then two, this census is so very important that we just not going to let up on that because we have something else that's going on. So we're definitely still working on partnering with people for our census and getting funds that way. But the other thing that we're doing is just making sure that our current advertisers and supporters are still doing okay. I sent out a personal letter to them just this last week to thank them for their continued support and because I appreciated it, as well as just in giving them some encouraging words on how they can make it through the next half of the year. Um, I don't take any contract we have lightly. I think that they have been a partner with us for whether it's a year or whether it's 2 weeks. I appreciate them and helping us get the word out to the community. So I always try to do something extra for the people who've been supportive. So just encouraging them in my personal letter that I sent is going to go a long way for just telling us some things that they can do strategically to get us through these last 6 months. Because these first 6 months was terrible for everybody. But I wanted to make sure they knew that I care for them and I still love them and we're going to get through this together. And I just wanted them to know that. So I do that periodically. I'll send them a letter, but that's what I just did just last week.
Yeah, and you guys are both your CEOs, your publishers, but you're also journalists. Any questions for each other that you'd like to ask?
No, just how do you manage everything? It is just so hard. Just being the publisher is one thing, but then the CEO, and then you got to write a story every now and then too. Woo, that's how I feel on Wednesdays.
Well, I'm sure that every one of us feels the same way because there's always never enough time in the day, and you're always at work 24/7. And that's kind of one of the hazards of our occupation is that we never feel like we can rest. And, and therefore our families suffer and our personal relationships suffer because we invest so much and we are driven so much by the desire to succeed as entrepreneurs, but also driven by the sacred mission of the work that we've undertaken. I think that none of us approaches the work of communicating and reporting and journaling without a certain somberness and a certain awareness of how critical this work is. This is not faint-hearted work, light-hearted work. This is very serious that we do. And so that drives us. I think the key is to figure out ways to replicate what you do and to generate it. So here's what I do. Like when I get done with this program with you in about 15 minutes, I'm going to be doing the daily podcast of Conversations with Al McFarland, right?
Oh,
So
goodness.
I'm on radio every Tuesday, live radio. Been doing that for 25 years. And then we pivoted to go live 5 days a week using social media. We first added social media to the radio show so that as it was being recorded in a studio, not recorded, but presented live in studio, we were webcast directly to YouTube and to other sources, Facebook, Instagram at the same time. So then, because of the intensity of issues, we decided that once a week wasn't enough. Let's go live every day. So every day at one. I've got politicians, candidates, I've got business leaders, doctors, physicians from Puerto Rico, from New York, from LA calling to talk about coronavirus, COVID-19. So we do these things every day. When the minute the show is over, I have the transcripts back to me through a service at 8 in the morning. So I have the actual verbatim transcript And to the degree that I have time, I edit those and post those as news stories on my website or in the next paper coming up. I also have a reporter on the line with me whose job is to do the story about the interview. So there's two ways to do that. The key then is to use the newspaper, to view the newspaper as an archive. This is a slice of our community that we see passing, and we just capture parts of it as it passes through. But we see ourselves as content creators. We're curating content, and that is a 24/7 operation. So that's a different framework. And so if we see ourselves as on, alive, and in the flow 24/7, and then we have to see how many ways can we channel the content that we are touching, creating, producing, and sharing. So it's an attitude thing, and once you sort of adopt that mindset, it's kind of like flying. You just flow with it, and it works itself out for you as well. That has
Yeah.
to include the selling and the monetizing of the content that you're creating, but you got to create it to monetize it. So creating is the most important thing.
And before Al has to run, and before we allow Gina Wilson Stewart to get back to her business, um, over the course of your career, what would you
And I cannot
say?
hear you. I'm sorry. I'm not hearing you.
Okay, so over the course of your career, what would you say was a story or issue that impacted you the most, Gina?
Uh, Maybe Lois, you can go first.
I can think that impacted me I don't know.
So much, right? So much has been going on.
Yeah, I've been doing this for what 15 years now, so I can't
Yeah.
think of anything in particular.
Well, is there any stories that stand out that really that you were so glad you got the story and you was able to tell it in the way that perhaps only the Telegram could tell it?
I would just talk about the one we just did recently because we had this real big Juneteenth celebration right in the neighborhood, right in the heart where everything used to go on. And then the facility like closed down and it was like nothing going on at this place at all. And so the community came together and revamped, and then it was a big block club party right down the street in the neighborhood where everything used to go on. um, it was at Samuel B. Milton, a black doctor. The center was named after him, but he's passed on now. But it was just a building sitting there, not being used. And that particular day, the police was out, the community was out, kids, younger. We were supposed to be social distancing, but not everybody had a mask on. But it was just the fact to have everybody down in this one place together again, that was huge for the community. So, and one of our old interns, who's now our freelance writer, Xavier Jones, he actually covered it, did the history of the center, history of Juneteenth, and then talked about the event. So that was huge, and that was just a couple weeks ago.
Wow. And Gina, we know that as you've already stated, it takes so much to put a good newspaper together, to really be a part of a community. You probably get a lot of awards. We know you've gotten awards, but what kind of award or recognition is most meaningful to you?
When I'm walking through the neighborhood or stopping at a gas station and they say, "Hey, that's the telegram lady."
The Telegram lady.
Yeah, they recognize me, and I think that's more than any award that I can get. Or somebody will call and say, "Oh, I just love that article," or "I love that story," or "You did a great job." That's more rewarding to me than any award that I could actually get.
Yeah, and isn't it true, Gina? And I would surmise that it's certainly true at the Telegram that our articles in the Black press, the articles that you publish, are really scrutinized before they are published, and certainly after they are published, probably more so than mainstream media.
Always, yeah. But I'd say it's we only do positive stories basically, and I tell them I write it so that they'll understand the real story. And so
Hmm.
they know what they're going to get when they read the Telegram newspaper. I don't know about everybody else, but they know what they're going to get because it's going to have the flair of the positiveness as well as the truth, and they
Yeah,
know that's
yeah.
what they're going to get.
Yeah, we live in an era where the president loves to say fake news, right? But as you underscored, the truth is what's really important. And we have to ask this before we let you go, Gina Wilson. So you've been a great sport, staying with us for the full hour. Thank you so much. Black people are being killed in the streets every week. We ask this question of a lot of our publishers, just about all of them, and it seems that it's happening every week by people that are supposed to protect us. What can the Black press do to save Black lives?
Uh, tell the tell the story. I guess if we just dig down and actually told the data of what was happening, what has happened in the past, and then give something encouraging for Black people. I'm a real believer in people knowing their worth. Some things that Black people would not be involved in that would, one, save their lives, and two, knowing, I know this might not sound right, but knowing how to respond when something happens will actually save their lives as well. I don't put it all on the cops because there's good police officers and there's bad police officers. So I'm not going to say that the police officers are always wrong. One way we can actually save ourselves, as I said before, is have more conversations with your family members. You got to tell them their worth. If I value myself, I value my relationship with my family and my parents, and I'm not going to do anything that, one, is going to embarrass them, but then I'm not going to do anything that's going to put my life in jeopardy or their lives in jeopardy. So I think I'm going to go back to that communication piece. We have to talk more. If you look at the generations from us, I'm almost 60, and then you look at the people who are 30 and under, it's a big disconnect in what we value. Like, I can take $15 and live for the whole week. And I'm looking at some people I saw just yesterday out at Dairy Queen when I treated my father to Dairy Queen. And I saw a little 4-year-old kid had this huge ice cream cone. Now, I know he couldn't eat it, the whole thing. So I said, "You don't eat that whole thing?" And he just looked at me. But that's what his mother bought him. I'm like, she didn't value her money, for one, because he wasn't going to eat it all. But then she fussed at him because he wasn't acting right, eating the ice cream cone with a spoon. So I'm like, where's the conversation going? Get him a little cone, value your money, let him learn how to use that little cone, and then get him a bigger cone.
Mm,
It's just a process, but it alwa's going to go back to communication and knowing your value, knowing your worth.
yeah,
That'll help save your life. I know that will.
absolutely. And again, we encourage everyone to sign up or register for the virtual convention, the 193rd year of the Black Press of America and the 80th anniversary of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Registration is totally free at www.virtualnnpa2020.com. And with that, Gina Wilson Stewart of the Telegram, is there a message? We've had several people give messages of congratulations and happy anniversaries to the NNPA and the Black Press of America. Any message you want to give along those lines?
I would say congratulations for being there, being here. I was an engineer at first, so this was a second career for me, and it has definitely helped me with all of my children are college graduates, and it's because of the Black press and what we've been able to accomplish together as the Telegram, as well as all of the other publishers. And I really enjoyed going to the conference, and I think this is going to be great to have a virtual conference next week where we can be at home. But I just want to say keep up the good work, and all of us just need to communicate better with each other and keep telling the story.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Gina Wilson Stewart, the CEO and publisher of the Telegram, We really appreciate you taking out the time tonight, this afternoon. Look, we lose track of time, don't we, Gina?
Yes, yes.
Tonight we will continue our the Black Presses music series. We have the legendary DMC from Run DMC tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. So tune in right here. And again, our publishers are every Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So everyone continue to tune in and support the Black Press. Stay safe and stay well. We'll see you soon. We'll see you tonight.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.